for the not having the lecture taped last time because we had that power outage in Brenham. The server apparently is located there for the integrity class, but what I did is the lecture we did last time is very similar, as Ashley can attest to. Well, you had me for 13, you have me for History 1301. To what I teach in my History 1301 class. So what I did is I just brought over a lecture that I'd done previously in a history class, and you'll see it when you look on it. It says, listen for this time period right here. That's all you need to listen to. Okay? So, we've got the Constitution placed into effect. It has been ratified. Now, who can tell me something interesting about one of the changes that they made to the Constitution over the Articles of Confederation when it was written? In regards to I'll make it really easy. In regards to ratification. No. Remember, Articles of Confederation did not have a president. I'm talking about ratification.
It shifted from the unanimous decision to 3/4. Is that correct?
2/3 to 3/4, depending on how you do it. But the way it works for the Constitution, in order for it to be ratified, for it to go into effect, it required a 3/4 vote because they sent it to special state convention. When the state legislators are going to amend the Constitution, as you will see in a little bit, what they do is they make it so that it is only requires a 2/3 vote. Now, what about the Constitution when it was being ratified? If your state did not ratify it, did it affect you still during ratification once it was ratified?
Yes.
No. Did not affect you. Now, because it was your decision to enter into the Union. All right? You got it? Follow? Okay. Now, when you amend the Constitution, and 2/3 of the states amend it, what happens to those who say, no, we're not going to amend it, we don't like it, we don't agree with it? What happens? Then it affects you. Okay? Follow the difference? Because what we're talking about freely entering into the Union and agreeing that all decisions that are made to amend the Constitution, when 2/3 of the people vote on them, it is going to go into effect. It's going to apply to you as well. Like the 15th Amendment gives African American males the right to vote. I don't like that. You're in the South. Oh, we don't like that. We're not going to vote for it. Well, that's fine. You don't vote for it. 2/3 of the states vote for it and give African American males that right. What happens? It occurs in your state as well. Now, as we will see when we get after this exam, when we get to the second exam, there are going to be, especially in Texas, policies that are created to try to circumvent, especially the 15th Amendment. And we'll get there. We'll talk about it when we get there. Now, let's talk about the Constitution in effect. So, George Washington goes and is inaugurated. Becomes President of the United States. When he becomes President of the United States, he is charged by the Constitution with making sure that all laws passed by Congress are dutifully enforced. What does that mean? Harry S. Truman had a very famous statement when he was president from 1945 to 52. Truman had a very famous statement, and that statement was, the buck stops where? Buck stops here. If a law is passed by Congress, whose job is it to make sure that law is enforced? It is the president. That is what the president exists for, constitutionally. He exists to make sure all laws passed by Congress are dutifully enforced. Okay? Now, when Washington is inaugurated, he realizes that he has a very, very important position in the government, because everything that he does is going to create a precedent. What's a precedent? Initial action? Okay. Let's put it in Aggie terms. After a football game once, a whole bunch of, that A&M actually won. I know you guys are like, whoa, A&M won the football game? Yes. In the good old days, they had a tendency to win. And what happens is a whole bunch of fish cadets got mad at the yell leaders because they were yelling and screaming at them and making them do crazy things. And after the game, they said, "We're going to get him. We're going to throw him into the fish pond." Okay, that's what we're going to do. So they ran, they grabbed him, and they threw him into the fish pond. Well, it so happens that because they won that game, and they had won the game when they've done that, they threw him in the fish pond. Somebody said, "Hey, you know what? That was really fun. Let's do it again." And next thing you know, it becomes what? A tradition. And I know that one is not practiced on A&M at A&M anymore because A&M doesn't win football games. So I have hopes that in the future that we shall start winning again, but we shall see. That is the same thing as a precedent. If somebody had done it beforehand, there is reason to do it again. So Washington was very cognizant of the fact that every action he took was going to create a precedent. So when he made a decision, he made sure that it was something that could be looked on for future reference, so that he would violate the Constitution, and because everybody was trying to figure out how to do things at first, and he did it wrong. And then people would say, well, Washington violated the Constitution in this regard, so I can do it as well. So let's look at one of his first actions. He is charged with the Constitution with dutifully enforcing all laws passed by Congress. How hard is it for one man to ensure that every single law passed by Congress is enforced in 13 different states? Pretty hard. Now let's jump ahead to 2012 and grow it to 50 states. How hard is it for one person to do that? It's impossible. Okay? It requires way too much legwork. And it requires too many people to make sure that these laws are being enforced. So to help him, he is going to create a cabinet level in which these people are going to, who are on this cabinet, are going to help him do his jobs. And these cabinets, members of the cabinet, are going to be the leaders of the 4 original branches of bureaucracy of the executive branch that were created. Okay. The first one is the Department of State. This handles all diplomacy, all matters from dealing with foreign policy in regards to another nation.
What did you say it was?
Department of State, State Department. So this is overseen by a Secretary of State. Overseen by a Secretary of State. First Secretary of State was a man by the name of Thomas Jefferson. Next, the Treasury Department is the nation's chief banker. Treasury Department, the nation's chief banker. In charge of monetary policy. Who is that? Alexander Hamilton. The reason he's on the $10 bill. Third branch, Department of War. First Secretary of War was a man by the name of Henry Knox. Why do you know the name Knox?
Fort Knox.
Fort Knox, where what? Where all the gold is kept? That is a lie. There is no gold kept at Fort Knox in that little building.
Aliens.
No, that's out in Arizona. Area 51. We can't talk about that.
Turn your camera off.
What?
Turn your camera off, we can talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Was that Department of what?
Secretary of War, Department of War. See, that was the good old days. When we had the Department of War, nobody messed with us. You know, with the Department of War, we just sit around talking about how to blow the crud up and who to kill next. You know, now what do we have after World War II? What do we have? Secretary of Defense. We have the Defense Department. Oh, don't mess with us. Don't mess with us. You hit us, we'll hurt you. Maybe. We're going to defend ourselves. Instead of a Department of War. So when I become president, that's the first thing I'm doing. Department of War. Nobody will mess with this again, right? Because that scares people too much. We've got an entire department designed to beat up any other nation in existence. Right? Hey, I already told him I planned on Mexico. Yeah. That's why I can't run for office. All my things are recorded. This Mexico policy. Yes, sir. What was his first name? Henry. Henry Knox.
K-N-O-X.
K-N-O-X, yep. And the last person is the Attorney General. The only person on the cabinet that is not considered a secretary. Now, not the secretary like, you know, your parents have in their office, but this is the person who's actually in charge within bureaucracy, executive branch. In different levels of government, they are known as ministers. But because the United States was trying to avoid any form of religious connotations, they are called secretaries. So like Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Diplomacy, things of that nature. And the Attorney General is the chief lawyer of the nation. Chief lawyer of the nation. And our Attorney General at that time is a man by the name of Edmund Randolph. Now, why do you know the name Edmund Randolph? This guy that came up with the Virginia Plan. Now, according to the Constitution, as originally written, when the president runs for the office, the individual who gets the highest number of electoral votes, excuse me, let me phrase that, the majority of electoral votes becomes president. Well, what happens to the first runner-up? He gets the consolation prize of being the vice president. Now, could you imagine if this was not changed today, and in 2008, we elected President Barack Obama and Vice President John McCain? Even worse, imagine the 2000 election in which you would have elected President George Herbert Walker Bush and Vice President Al Gore, who had been Vice President 8 years previous. That would not go over very well. As you'll see as we get a little further, it doesn't go over very well when originally crafted in the Constitution either. Now, the first person to get the vice presidency was a man by the name of John Adams. He's going to become the second president, but the Constitution calls the vice president, or gives him the power of being the president of the Senate. When you guys watch the State of the Union address, where was Vice President Joe Biden? He was where? He was behind him sitting on the dais. They were actually in the House of Representatives, because the House of Representatives holds 435, and you can stretch that with putting seats on the side to add another 100, for a total of 535 individuals. A lot easier than you can go to the House of Representatives, which holds 400, and shoving 535 in there. Correct? Yeah. So as a result, Biden was sitting back there because he is the Vice President of the Senate. Now, today, what happens when the President dies? Vice President becomes President. It wasn't that way under the Constitution. It is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution that the Vice President becomes President when the sitting President dies. However, it's one of those situations that was most likely inferred. Why do we know it was inferred? Because John Adams, who was one of the individuals who was in on the crafting of the Constitution, states in his memoirs that he was one heartbeat away from the President of the United States. If Washington's heart was to stop beating, Adams realized who would be next in line, and it would be him. Okay, so let's now talk about the Constitution, and let's see what we have got. When the Constitution is created, we create a new, or we found a new type of government that has not been seen in centuries. It is a republic. Now, there are 5 issues that we are going to deal with in this class in regards to 5 leading principles of the Constitution. The first is that although it is a republic, which is a government of laws, it is a representative democracy. Now, what's the difference? A representative democracy allows us to make decisions, allows us to vote for people to make decisions for us. Why? You elect your representative to Washington to make decisions for you. Why?
Do we have a ballot?
Why don't you make the decisions for what your government is? What?
There's too many.
There's way too many people for you. There's way too many people for Congress to hear from you. And that's just one level. Let's think about this. How many of you guys have the time to stay abreast of what is occurring in Congress? Hey, no hands went up. Okay, well, what about the state legislature as well? Still not seeing any hands. What about your county board of commissioners? Nobody is raising their hands. What about your city council? How many of you guys know exactly what's going on in every single one of your city council decisions that is affecting you right now? No hands. Man, you guys are some uninformed individuals. How about in your school board? How about in your water conservation district? Nobody's hands went up. Why? Because you do not have the time to represent your points of view at all those different levels. As a result, we elect people whose sole job is to represent us as a people at that level. Okay, that's why the Constitution creates this representative democracy at this level. That's what it does. Boom, here it is. We are going to elect representatives to go forth and speak for us. Now, I said representatives. What about the other half of the House? How is the other half of the House, other half of Congress chosen? What is the other half of Congress? It is the Senate. Now, today we elect our senators from an at-large, through an at-large election, which means they represent the entire state. Both of them represent the entire state. We don't draw a line separating Texas, which, over here's one and over here's the other. Got it? Okay, we don't do that. They represent the state equally. For our representatives, they are divided up into individual districts, try to make them as uniform as possible. Now, have any of you guys ever voted in a primary election before? Probably not, because it'll have been 4 years since we've had one. Previously, we have had elections, primaries, in March, and then in 2008, we actually moved it up until February. It's a process called front loading. We'll talk more about that when we cover primaries in depth. This year, our primary is going to be held April 3rd, at the earliest, and maybe later. Why? This is a big deal. It contravenes everything that we know about the policy of front-loading, in which you try to make your primary so early. So why is the state doing it in April instead of middle of February like they would like to do? The reason is because last year was a census year. Every 10 years we conduct a census. Why do we do a census? Okay, to do what with population? So you know how many people. And what happens is you figure out how many representatives you have, and then you try to draw districts that represent Texas as a whole. So if Texas has 13% African Americans, 20%, 26% Hispanics, 48% Anglo, you try to draw districts that are like that. If you don't, you employ a process known as gerrymandering. Well, Texas was accused of gerrymandering districts, and it went up to the, a suit went up to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court overturned a lower court's decision and said Texas needs to look at these maps again, and they need to have them done fairly soon. Because all this is going on right now in Texas, we had to move our districts back, our primaries back, so we would know which districts to use. This is nothing new. In the 1990s, it was 8 years before our maps got out of court. No? And then what happened 2 years later? We drew new ones. So this is nothing new. We'll go into this quite a bit. But what we try to do is we try to draw representative districts that best represent us. So whatever the Texas percentage is, we try to draw individual districts that look exactly like a miniature Texas. I'm not talking about the really cool shape. I'm talking about demographics-wise. So representative democracy. It's the next best thing to pure democracy. Pure democracy, you all go out and you make decisions that affect us directly. Frankly, none of you have time. Nobody has time. Therefore, we elect people to go and speak for us. Second, we believe in a limited government. We limit the government as what it can do to you. How do we do it? Through separation of powers. That's really controlling so nobody will take over the government from one branch to another. But what's the other one?
Checks and balances.
Okay, but we're talking about individuals here. How does the government, how can check and balance you? You don't really check it. The only real way you can check the president is voting against him.
Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. Those 10 amendments that we'll get to in a bit that say this is what the Constitution, and this is what you can do, and this is what you cannot do. We talked at the very beginning about freedom of speech through monetary donations. Next is popular sovereignty. How many guys have had issue 1301? Bloody Kansas, Ian, tell me about it.
I had rights class.
I'll make sure I tell them that. Bloody Kansas. Who remembers Bloody Kansas?
I do that one.
1854, the Kansas-Nebraska territory opens up, Tom.
Wait, was that where it was becoming into the U.S., but is like over an issue if it's going to have slavery or
Slavery,
not?
freedom, and who we're going to decide. Who is going to decide?
The population, so people
Right.
start moving in,
That's
and
exactly,
there's
yes.
like a lot of fighting.
What happens is it was decided that instead of having all these crazy lines drawn, let's throw all the rules out and say, you want to be a slave state? You vote for a slave state. You want to be free? You vote. You be free. And the problem is that both sides brought in their undesirables to try to vote their way, and as a result, it ended up in bloodshed instead of bloody Kansas. However, the concept that was used there was popular sovereignty. Let the people decide. We decide what we want. You don't like what your representative is doing? What do? You vote against them. You get all your buddies to vote against them in the next election. We, the people of the United States, make up the government, and we are the ones who decide. How? Through popular sovereignty. This concept of allowing the people to decide. All right, now, Emily, let's talk separation of power. Okay? The fourth step is separation of power. We have a separate executive branch, we have a separate judicial branch, and we have a separate executive, legislative branch, and judicial branch. All three. No one is lawmaker, law enforcer, and judge and jury. No entity does that. Oh, I bet I know something I can get you guys to talk about. Last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, the government went in and closed down a file sharing company. Media share or something?
Mega.
What?
Mega upload.
Mega Upload. Closed down Mega Upload. Went in, closed it down, absolutely killed the business. They could have gotten millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why did they do it?
I've read some stuff about like like money laundering, like racketeering, and
Right.
not just like copyright infringement,
Right.
like a lot more like money laundering. I never would have guessed that the owner of Mega Upload was, laundering money or doing all that stuff.
Okay. So has he
I think it's a girl.
gone? It's
Sure.
actually a girl. It's a guy. No,
It
it's a
is
guy.
a guy?
It's a guy. Okay. He's in Australia. He tried to buy New Zealand. Something bizarre there. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so this is what happens. Okay. So this guy is an American citizen, right? The United States government goes in and it takes it goes in and it shuts this company down. I mean, it's out of business.
Have you gone to their site?
No, I don't want to have people knocking on my door.
No, it has a little label of why all the reasons that.
Right.
why
But
they-
were those found, were those decisions found to be true in a court of law?
It's no.
Were
By
they?
the government. I don't know. The government.
Did they?
knows.
What? Have they gone to trial?
Not that I know.
Have they been convicted by a jury of their peers? But what has happened? Has the government gone in and shut down a business, regardless of whether or not it's legal or not? Have they overstepped their bounds? Have they gone in and said, we as the executive branch are closing you down and you're being denied, property, and life, some liberty, because there's a arrest warrant out for this guy now. But they're doing this, and have they gone through a grand jury? Have they, what have they gone through here?
If evidence that proves
But evidence, what is this nation founded on?
they have reason to do harm.
Innocent until
Innocent
proven
until proven
guilty.
guilty. What?
But if they have potential to do harm,
What harm are they doing?
they're committing infractions on laws. They're breaking laws.
But who decides that?
They haven't been.
Government.
But they haven't been.
But don't they have to go, do we not have to follow the process?
No, because if I bring if someone has something where they're not supposed to have it, I don't have to say anything, whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's reason to do harm, everyone has a right to stop you. Does that make sense?
John,
How can
I
we?
see where you're going, Ian.
I don't
Here
see
we go.
how we can rightfully convict someone if we don't do due process of law. That's how it was set up to be, so we could
Right.
take it through the court system legally.
Hey, I should have started this at the very beginning. Ian, you're getting mad.
Well, I mean, okay, if I find out that someone's going to, go blow something up,
Right,
and,
yes. But there's
that's
a
the
substantial,
point.
but you're not doing physical harm. What physical harm?
But you're
was-
stealing.
It's
It's to commit a crime.
What proof is that they have?
Yeah.
Don't you have to
The
look
fact
at this?
that music is being uploaded and being downloaded.
Okay,
It was a big
They can prove
all
it.
right, okay, all right. I'm covering the camera. Raise your hand if you've never gotten a song illegally. Oh, see, nobody. The camera's closed, guys.
This morning.
Did this morning illegally.
Sharing.
It's sharing. Yeah, you just don't have the copyright. You don't have the copyright. Yeah, there's going to be a Care Bear that's like, file Steel Bear.
Well, it's one thing to arrest the guy though, and then it's another thing to completely shut
Right,
down
and
the
they just completely destroyed his company.
like
That's
his company.
But what I was going to say, they've shut down. They can lock corporations' funds, right? They can freeze all their funds based on a suspicion. That's basically what they're doing. I mean, shutting them down is basically shutting a corporation or any big business down if you take their money.
No, notice I'm not agreeing with anybody here. I'm just.
No, I know.
I'm trying to
Just throwing it out there.
You guys are actually getting animated now. Because what's the next step? Are they gonna? I grew up. Okay, you guys are probably too young for this, but when Napster first came out, I was a big Napster hog. I probably still have software on songs on my computer that I got off Napster back in '01. All right, Will Smith can jiggy with it. Stuff like that. But with that information, the RIAA had tried to go out and get subpoenas and get people to turn over information saying what you had downloaded. And that's a non-government agency getting information that they have no right to. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is this, although this is the way it is, sometimes the way our government has evolved, this doesn't happen right now. I'm sure I have some person in here who would say, well, look at President Obama, look what he's doing, our executive branch is too powerful, they need to go back to their constitutional limits, you know, and and there's something to that. Where in the Constitution does it say on the executive branch that the president controls student loans? Where does it say that? But that's the only place you can get student loans now is through the government. You can't get it from private entities, private banks. They don't do it anymore because the government has undercut them. You know, which is also the reason I think we brought this up before, where President Obama has come out and said he worked for the government for like 5 years afterwards. We'll forgive your entire debt. He can do that because they are now under the executive branch.
Does that include military? Or is that just...
I don't know. I think that's actual civil government.
Okay.
You know, I have no problem with people going into the... I have no problem with anybody going into the military and paying their college afterwards or during. You know, you have to reserve, all that. The whole DREAM Act issue that he brought up in his debate, where he said that if you go to college or you go into the military and you finish it, you can become an American citizen. I don't think they should be going, if you're a legal immigrant, I don't think you should be going to college. Go to the military, come out a little bit later, then go to college. That's fine. Go as an American citizen. My own personal view. I think that's absolutely fantastic that is a way that we offer it, because my experience, people who go in the military and they come out, they understand the freedom that we're talking about, that frankly, the average 18-year-old guy who just graduated from high school, the only freedom they're worried about is Thursday nights, where they don't have to be home to tell mom where they're at, you know, because that's their definition of freedom. All right, so that's separation of power. The legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, and then the judicial branch decides what the laws say. Okay, follow? The president does not make sure the laws are, the president does not make the laws. The judicial branch does not make the laws. And the legislative branch does not say what the laws are or enforce them. It's one of the major issues we run into when we talk about prohibition, because the way the law was made is very hard to enforce. Now last is ambition to counter ambition. Ambition to counter ambition. What is an ambitious person? Okay, if somebody's ambitious, what do they want? Okay, they have their goals. And most likely, what will they do to accomplish their goals? Typically anything. Now, what's the number one way that you counter an ambitious person? Put them in a room with 434 other equally ambitious people. Back in 2000, when we had this crazy election in which no one won, in the first count, no one won the presidency of the United States, then recently elected Hillary Clinton, senator from New York, the junior senator from New York, went on television and said, the first thing I'm going to do once I enter the Senate is introduce an amendment to the Constitution that abolishes the Electoral College. Okay. To get his feeling on this matter, they interviewed the Republican, let's see, what is his name? I can see him. Oh. It's not delayed. The Republican Senate Majority Leader, the Republicans controlled the Senate at the time, said, what do you believe about Hillary Clinton's statement about doing away with the Electoral College? He said, Senator Clinton will learn very quickly that she is but one of the very, very junior senators that are coming into the Senate. And as a result, will be given all rights inherent. Basically what it was is, sit down, shut up. We'll tell you what to do, and you will do it because we've been here longer than you. Okay? There's a strict seniority system in Congress. The longer you're there, the more power you wield. Kind of like in high school, except it actually existed. You know, when you're seniors, you were walking tall, right? Beat up on all the freshmen. Yes? So the best way to counter ambition is to put them with equally ambitious people. Well, wait a minute, you say. How come they did that to Congress, but they didn't do it to the executive branch? Well, because when the Constitution was written, the great fear was if someone was going to take over the government, they wouldn't do it through the executive branch because that was worthless. There was no power there. They would do it through Congress. And so they did it to Congress and not the president. Because they said, yeah, nobody could ever rise to the ranks and make the presidency a monarch. All right. All right. Last 5 minutes of class, and you get to go out with a bang. Federalism. The Constitution creates a federal system of government. Now, what is a federal system of government? Get ready. Here it comes. The longest definition you will have all semester. There's good news and there's bad news to that. The good news, the good news is that I'm giving it to you the third week of the class. The bad news is it's really long. So here it comes. Ready? Federalism. A system of government where power is constitutionally divided. System of government where power is constitutionally divided. System of government where power is constitutionally divided. Between a central government and a series of lesser governments. Between a central government and a series of lesser governments. A system of government where power is constitutionally divided between a central government and a series of lesser governments. A system of government where power is constitutionally divided between a central government and a series of lesser governments. Central government where power is constitutionally divided between a central government and a series of lesser governments. Okay? Period. Both governments, somebody's pin dropped, heard it. Both governments act directly on the people. Both governments act directly on the people. What?
That's what I do. Instead of writing it.
Sometimes, hey, that helps. System of government where power is constitutionally divided between a central government and a series of lesser governments. Period. Both governments act directly on the people. Both governments act directly on the people, and both are supreme in their sphere of authority. Both governments act directly on the people, and both are supreme in their sphere of authority. Okay, what does that mean? System of government where power is constitutionally divided between a central government and a series of lesser governments. Both governments act directly on the people, and both are supreme in their sphere of authority. Okay, so under this, here is you. And here is the federal state. Okay? This is you, and this is your role as a citizen of Texas. Okay? And this is the federal government, and this is you, and the federal government's relation to you. What the federal government can do to you, and what the states can do to you, and what rights you have under either. The state is supreme under this definition of federalism in affecting you as a citizen, and the federal government is supreme in affecting you as a federal citizen. Okay? So, give me an example of something the state does to you.
Education.
Okay? What else? Or somebody say education. Not so much anymore.
Just should.
What?
Like local school boards and stuff like that.
Okay. So schools. Okay.
Aren't gun laws different for every state?
Gun laws. How many gun that there are different gun laws, like especially right to concealed carry. Like you can have concealed gun in Texas, but you cannot go into Oklahoma with a concealed handgun, or you will be arrested. Federal government.
But you can have it. I mean, like, you just can't have it on you, correct?
That's what Oklahoma says. I remember a guy got, and they may have changed. I remember a couple years ago, a guy got pulled over going into Oklahoma. He had, got pulled over and he had his gun there. So I got concealed carry. Too bad you're not in Texas anymore. There are limits to the rules that we have. Okay. What about what's the federal government one?
Healthcare.
No. I'm not going to put that one up. That's bad. Why am I not going to put it up? Because it hasn't been decided yet. It's still an issue. We'll talk about that when we get the next time when we discuss what the Constitution is. How about, let's do mail. How about military? What else?
Interstate commerce.
Interstate commerce.
Is that financial aid now?
What, interstate commerce?
Federal? No, federal. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah, it can be financial aid. It can be financial aid. Yeah. Depends on where the financial aid comes from. A lot of it does come from the federal government. But there is a substantial amount that comes from states as well. All right. Now, we're out of time, and what we're going to do when we come back is we're going to talk about how this theoretical system of federalism actually is today. All right. So see you guys Wednesday.